Growing up, I was never really exposed to Nintendo's first-party titles. In fact, I barely owned any Nintendo consoles. The only consoles that I had that were Nintendo were the Game Boy Color, which we later on sold, the Wii, and now the Switch. But now in 2021, I want to go back and play some of these older games, but instead of me having to buy them, of course, the most viable option is to turn to emulation. Now my goal is, before Breath of the Wild 2 releases and Metroid Dread next month, I want to be able to experience all the things that I missed. Unfortunately, a lot of those games are best played in portable mode, so while I can play Ocarina of Time 3D on my PC, I'd much rather play it handheld, the way that it's meant to be played. Of course, I could be playing these on my PC, but not all emulators like Citra work as well as they should, or as they would, if they were handheld. Which is why I'm using my Android phone, the TCL20 Pro 5G, alongside this little gadget, the Razer Kishi. Now I'm sure you've heard of it, it's not exactly new, and certain things like this aren't new, but a lot of times these kinds of things are on the expensive side, especially this. This thing fluctuates like crazy. If you look on Amazon or on their official website, the site is kind of inconsistent. If you're lucky enough and you keep a sharp eye, you might be able to spot a sweet deal. I know I did. I got this for 40 bucks on Amazon. Now while there are other cheaper alternatives, such as connecting a already existing Bluetooth controller to your phone and using a little attachment grip, it's not exactly the most portable way to play, and as someone who's been using his Switch a lot, I kind of wanted to have that experience again. So this is something that I was looking for. Also, I know there are other, again, alternatives that are similar to this, but are strictly Bluetooth, but I'd rather play on something like this that connects directly to your phone, as, you know, there may be some latency issues. However, this thing isn't exactly perfect. It's not the best option, but for the price, this is an amazing thing. If you can get as good a deal as I did, then definitely pick this up. But there are some caveats I want to discuss. So if you're looking to play regular mobile games, so not just emulator games like I did, this can be a good option, but some really popular games, it doesn't always work the best. So for example, when we're talking about Call of Duty Mobile, this thing natively connects to it if you have an iOS device. However, when we're talking Android, and I don't know if this is an Android 11 issue specifically, because I know sometimes some people have issues within the accessibility settings, which you gotta turn off, but certain apps like Call of Duty Mobile and Genshin Impact don't natively support it, and so there is a workaround, but it's not the best. So what I use is an app called the Panda Game Pro, which essentially is an app which kind of emulates and allows you to map the controls to each button as you desire. But because it's a mapping, it doesn't always work as well as you'd hope it would. As far as Call of Duty goes, it works almost perfectly fine for me. I don't really have any issues with it. The one thing is maybe when I'm going up to shank someone, I mapped it so it's the same as the analog, which is what I'm used to on the regular controller when I'm playing regular Call of Duty on my PS5. But the analog doesn't necessarily differentiate between when I want to press it versus when I want to swipe. It kind of does the same thing. It's a minor inconvenience, but the whole thing of trying to set it up adds to this whole process. But if you want to play games like Genshin Impact, for example, it works in terms of movement, because when it comes to certain things, like, yes, the action buttons and the movement and the jumping work fine, but when you have to go into the menus, it is a little bit more of a nuisance to be able to, you know, have to switch back and forth. I mean, for Call of Duty, you kind of have to do the same thing, but for me, I don't find it nearly as annoying. It could just be me and the way that I set it up, and maybe you can set it up better, but for me, I just didn't think it was worth playing and having that experience on this device. Especially knowing that I already have it on my PS5 and my PC, and I could just wait a little bit longer if I want to play it portably and play it on the Switch. Another place that it kind of works out, but then kind of doesn't, it's a give and take situation here again, is cloud gaming. When we're talking about Xbox, this thing runs perfectly. It works natively with this controller, and there are no issues. It's very, very smooth, given that you actually have a stable enough connection, which I don't. However, from the PlayStation side of things, that was something that just didn't work. Again, I'm not sure if this is something that I couldn't get to work, but I had to map those, and it was not a great experience. I tried Black Ops Cold War on there, and not only was it super laggy for me because I don't have a stable connection, but also just the way that everything felt, I'd rather just play on the console itself. However, I mostly got this not for those mobile apps, but mostly for emulation. As far as emulation goes, from the things that I've tried, this thing is amazing. I love this thing because you just connect it, again, works natively. Yes, you do have to map the buttons within each of those emulators themselves because, you know, you might want to change some things around. It's not something where you got to draw over it and it has to emulate button mapping. You just got to set it, and it works perfectly fine after that. As far as comfortability goes, it's not quite as comfortable as my Hori Splitpad Pro, which I use for the Switch, but it is better in my opinion than the Joy-Cons that it actually comes with. Now, while I could play an N64 emulator on my PC to play Ocarina of Time, I wanted to get the best experience that I could. And obviously the best experience is on the 3DS. And of course, Citra, the 3DS emulator, is on PC, and initially I did run Ocarina on it, in fact in 4K. But because it was designed with that secondary screen, it is so much easier and so much more fluid to be able to use it as a touchscreen the way that it was meant to be. And being able to have this as my all-in-one device where I can relive all my old experiences on the PSP when I had it, and some new ones that I never had, at the touch of a few buttons, is something I think that is amazing, and I think we've just come so far when it comes to emulation.